So today, I'm here to talk about the advancements in the fire industry and why they're moving towards automated testing systems and how this is relevant to electrotechnology students today. So to start off with, a little bit about us. We're an Australian manufacturer of emergency lights, and we've been designing them in-house in our Sydney office since 2011 for the last 15 years. Our founder came from the fire industry as an electrician, and so one of our core principles is consumer-centric design. We make sure to design products that are easy to install, easy to maintain, and fit for the Australian market. So over the past 15 years, we've seen three major breakthroughs. We saw the transition from fluorescent tubes to LEDs. We saw the upgrades in battery technology from lead acid, nickel metal hydride, nickel cadmium to lithium ion that we see today. And that significantly prolonged the lifetime of these emergency lights. The current breakthrough we're going through right now is the transition from manual testing with a test switch to automated testing systems. So today, I want to highlight the current industry landscape in the fire industry, the trends that it's going towards, and what electrotechnology students should know to address these trends. So as a member of the Technical Advisory Committee for the Maintenance of Fire Protection Systems and Equipment, we routinely hear two major pain points. The first one is a constant increase in regulatory requirement, and the second is a severe shortage of skilled labor. So we hear a lot of fire companies that are struggling to maintain a lot of their sites due to the increased demand for labor with the same workforce that they have. So a lot of them are consistently turning towards technology to improve their workflow and make them more productive. In just February this year, we saw AS 1851 became mandated in New South Wales. This meant that all buildings now need to conform to strict fire regulations. Defect rectification became mandatory. The auditing in these buildings increased significantly. And overall, it just placed a huge burden on these fire companies that were already struggling to manage these sites. So to illustrate this, I want to share some insights from us as a manufacturer and what we see. We've now seen a lot of these fire companies switch exclusively to using self-testing products. We see over 1,000 sites now that use these automated testing systems instead of manual test switch. So what we've seen as a manufacturer is an increase in adoption of these self-testing products over time. You can see over the years, so the way this graph works is it's a ratio between traditional emergency lighting sales to self-testing lighting sales. And you can see over time, the ratio of this has increased significantly. There's been about a 26% quarter-over-quarter increase in self-test adoption. And in the last couple months, it's nothing like what we've ever seen before. Ever since the AS 1851 mandate, where the workload on these fire companies has increased significantly, we've seen an increase of 67% quarter-over-quarter adoption of self-testing. In fact, in this current quarter, we've sold more self-testing products than we have traditional emergency lights. The trend is clear. These automated testing systems are going to become more prevalent in the industry. We're going to see more and more of them, and it's essential that we know how to address this trend. So why are we seeing this trend? The first reason is the simplicity of installation. In AS 2293, all emergency lights must be installed on either a dedicated emergency lighting circuit with a manual test switch, or it must have some sort of automated testing device. The problem is in a lot of buildings built before May 2006, these manual test switches weren't required. So a lot of these old buildings are lacking the critical infrastructure to install emergency lights in a compliant way. That's why a lot of fire companies are opting to use the automated testing systems. This means that regardless of the type of building, installation is easy because each fitting can test itself without impacting the rest of the lighting circuit. I think the biggest reason is the productivity boost it provides. So for a lot of fire companies, the main bottleneck is the time each technician must spend on site. Because emergency light testing takes at least 90 minutes to fully discharge the batteries and collect test results, this is a limiting factor on the amount of work a fire technician can do. Whereas before, a fire technician could only cover a few sites in a day. With automated testing, you can schedule these tests to conduct before they arrive on site. That means that when they arrive on site, all of the test results are ready to collect, so they can just do the visual inspection. This significantly increased the productivity of these fire technicians and allows the same workforce to cover many, many more buildings. Finally, it's also a better experience for the client. We recently worked with an escape room that had emergency lights in these rooms, and emergency lighting was always a very disruptive thing for them. It would test for 90 minutes during business hours, and they need to schedule it with a fire company to make sure it's not disrupting the business. That's why they chose to switch towards a more automated system. So for our products, you can schedule them to test at night. That means the testing out of business hours, hassle-free, and saves the client a lot of disruption. So what do students need to know? The most important thing a student needs to know is to be able to identify if they're working with an automated testing system. About 5 years ago, we worked with a large shopping mall that upgraded all of their emergency lights to an automated testing system. This was a really big investment by them because this was also a monitored system. This means that all of these lights were connected to the internet so that you could schedule tests, collect results, and view all your assets online 24/7. However, over the last 5 years, the building management team changed a couple times. And just a couple months ago, we saw 120 of these fittings go offline all in one go. So what happened is the new building management team wasn't aware that they were dealing with a monitored system. So when they did a lighting upgrade of the car park, they replaced all of the traditional emergency lights, with all of the monitored emergency lights with traditional emergency lights. Yeah. This completely nullified all of that investment they made 5 years ago. It meant that they now had to do manual testing again. It meant that they could no longer track all of their assets online, and they could no longer schedule tests. All in all, it cost this site thousands of dollars to rectify this by replacing these traditional lights back to a monitored system. So how can we avoid this mistake? The most important way and the easiest way to know is to look for a yellow indicator. It's written in the Australian standards that any device with an automated testing system needs to have a yellow status indicator. This is universal across all brands for products sold in Australia. It also has a predefined flash pattern so that you know how to collect test results regardless of the brand. Some other important things to know is how to schedule these tests. So when an automated testing product is replaced, it's very important that the new product is synchronized to the old testing schedule of the rest of the system. For our products, we offer a mobile app that allows you to connect directly to the device via Bluetooth and configure the test time, test schedule, and test frequency. For some other brands, it might be on a predefined test schedule that could be either 3 months or 6 months, and then you need to synchronize it by pressing a button on the fitting or by a special pattern in the test switch. It's very important to know how to schedule these so that all your tests are aligned at the same time to make sure your site is testing properly. Next, it's also important to know how to collect these test results. Our mobile app allows you to walk around and collect all your test results via Bluetooth, and it downloads straight to your phone and generates a test report. However, the foolproof way is always to look at the yellow status indicator. Again, this is required by Australian standards, and the flash patterns are consistent across all brands. And finally, it's important to label the switchboards. In AS 229 3.1, you need to label all switchboards if it has an emergency light on that circuit. We provide a special switchboard label that also identifies it's an automated testing system. It just helps the next person maintaining the site know what they're dealing with. So I've put together a quick graph of the current options on the market and a brief summary of how they rank. As we all know, the manual testing method, the upfront cost is lower, but as I mentioned before, you need to do a manual 90-minute test, which a lot of fire companies are struggling to compensate for. Although it's a little bit more expensive, automated testing systems are now becoming more and more prevalent due to the ease of use. A common problem that we see in the market is that without a mobile app to schedule these tests, they run on a predefined 3 or 6 month test schedule. These test results only last for 30 days, according to Australian standards. So sometimes it can be very difficult to synchronize your workflow to these predefined test schedules. A lot of times when you arrive on site, the test result might already be expired, and then you'd need to retest and wait for the 90 minutes. So that's why by using a mobile app, you can choose the exact test date and time you want to do the test so that you have a 30-day window where you know you can collect the test results. Of course, the ultimate system in all of this is a monitored testing system. These lights all talk to each other and communicate to the internet, so they can schedule them all in one go, collect all the test results online, and view all your assets 24/7. All right, so to talk a little bit about the future of emergency lights. These monitored systems have lights that all talk to each other and communicate to the internet via a centralized gateway. We're seeing a lot of new builds specified with these types of systems. Think shopping malls, airports, large commercial sites. With thousands of fittings, it's almost impossible to properly manage the amount of emergency lights here. That's why a monitored site that gives you the full asset visibility allows you to manage these large sites effectively. To tap into this network, we've expanded with products like IoT monitoring. For example, a fire extinguisher hook that lets you monitor the status of fire extinguishers, gives you alerts if anyone's picked it up or discharged it. We have fire pump monitoring products. And this is really where the future of fire safety is heading towards. As the regulatory requirements increase and the burden on these fire companies increases, they're turning more and more towards technology to manage their day-to-day asset management and maintenance workflows. Thank you everyone very much for your time.